Hey everybody, this is chapter 3 about what do we do with all the student writing now that we're having our students do more of it. It's from the Elements book. Here is the Elements book so that you'll know what it looks like. It's one of the 3 that I gave you last time. And one of the things that I talked about last time was process writing. The thing about process writing, what I like about it is it tries to emulate real-world writing. All the writing that we do in our jobs, in our homes, in things other than the kind of false classroom situation. And when we are writing in the real world, we have a purpose to write, or else we wouldn't be doing it. And when we write it, we usually show it to somebody to say, is this doing what I want it to do? And then that person gives you feedback, and then you make changes. So that's what process writing is about in a nutshell. So on chapter 3 of the Elements book, page 48 starts with a section called the silent transaction. And what this does is it just tries to disrupt what we normally think of as the traditional relationship between the student and the teacher. In the old way, the teacher was the judge. But in the new way, we say no, the teacher's not the judge, the teacher's the reader and responder. The student too, as you'll see at the very end of this chapter, the student too has a different role in this situation. In the old model, we might have thought of the student as a passive recipient of our wisdom. You write the paper, we'll tell you whether it's good or not. You go home and think about what we've said. In this new model, what we want is our students to be active participants. And what that results in, we hope, is a situation where we're communicating and collaborating with our students, a different kind of relationship. So the section that begins on page 49 is called Approaches to Avoid, or An Approach to Avoid, which is that old I'm the grader approach. When you read that section, look on page 50 where it says 4 things that happen when grading is your main goal. What I'd like you to do as you read that section is for each one of those 4 things, write briefly, do you agree with this or not? And why or why not. Likewise, on page 51, the chapter tells you about 3 types of graders in the old model. What I'd like you to do as you read this is write on a separate piece of paper or in the margins or somewhere, which one of these did you encounter most often as a student, and what effect did that have on you as a student? Which one of these do you tend to be, and how willing are you to change? Starting on page 53 is a section that's called What Students Prefer, and not surprisingly, it argues that students prefer this model, the communicator/collaborator model. Now, up to this point, the chapter's trying to convince us, tell us why we should adopt this new role as responders rather than graders. But starting on the next page, on page 54, it's how to go about doing that. It gives 4 steps in how you change the way that you read your students' papers. The first one is in how you read. The second is make general comments. The third is make specific comments. And only the very last is put a grade on it. Now, in terms of our process writing, this is the final draft. When you've given your students all kinds of feedback. Their peers have given them feedback. They've gone to the Writing Center. They've gotten feedback. And ideally, they've substantially changed their paper based on those different points of feedback. At the end, though, you have to finally be the judge that we talked about, but it's only after they've had a chance to think about and revise. Now, under each of these sections, we have lots of bullet points. What I want you to do as you read, for each bullet point, in the margin, give it a score of 1 to 5, with 1 being it's very hard for me to see myself doing this. And with 5 being, oh yeah, I can do this. That's easy to see, no problem. Then the last section, the one that we're always happy to see, well, the second to last section, sorry, is how you can do all this new way of writing and still manage to save time. In other words, not have this take over your whole life. On page 58, you get 5 basic philosophical points about saving your time. And on page 59 and then on to 60, you get 8 more suggestions of how to save time. As you read these 13 suggestions, would you please mark the 3 that you think will be the most helpful to you and the 3 that you think will be the least helpful to you as you transition to this new way of reading your students' papers. Okay, that's it for chapter 3. What I'd like you to do is have all of these notes that I've asked you to take as you read chapter 3, and then that way when we start on Saturday, we have something that everybody can talk about instead of me just being the one to talk. By the way, this is a writing to learn activity. It's called, some people call it priming the pump, where rather than having you read cold, I walk through the chapter and show you what it is that I want you to look for, and I ask you to write. So that's a good writing to learn activity that you can try to use if you'd like. See you Saturday.